I apologize. I accidentally cut off that video early. I hit the wrong button. So this is video number 4, chapter 13, Institution of Politics and the Economy. So what limits our vote? Do we really have as much power in our voting process in elections? So this is a process of political socialization. So how do Americans decide who to vote for? How do we make decisions about it? Well, our family is very influential on us. Usually people vote very similarly to their parents. You were raised to think a certain way with certain values, certain important things in your life, and so that's very influential. The amount of education that you have is very influential. Statistically, the more education that you have, the less conservative that you are. Those definitions of liberal versus conservative are moving around all the time, but statistically, that has been shown to be true. Mass media, the images that you see in the news, magazines, social media, online, what type of where you get your news from. Do you listen to NPR? Do you watch NBC? Do you watch Fox News, CNN? Those things influence our political decisions. Our economic status, where you fall in that social stratification, whether you're working class or you are upper middle class, that also influences how you vote in your political ideology. The job that you work is very influential. Your occupation impacts who you vote for. Your age impacts who you vote for. Typically, the older that you are, the more conservative that you are. And your gender and the way that you are socialized into your gender also impacts how you vote. So these are things that influence how you decide who you vote for. So in the United States, there has been an effort to become more pluralistic, okay? Meaning that you don't have a two-party system. You try and make decisions based upon competition, bargaining, compromise, um, and things have been formed such as special interest groups to help promote the needs, the wants of the less powerful people who are not so involved in government. But through these efforts of creating interest groups, and interest groups are defined as a group organized to influence political decision making. So some examples of interest groups would be the NRA, the Sierra Club, which is an environmental group, women's rights groups, unions. Those are examples of interest groups. And what they do is they go to government, they talk to our legislators, and try to affect change for their special interests. So what has happened, though, is those who are wealthy and powerful have realized that these interest groups are a funnel to get their own ideology through to our government. So pluralism sees that no group would hold the majority of power and that there would not be this two-party system, and there would be more opportunity for those less wealthy, less powerful to still make change in government. So what has happened is the development, things that our government has tried to do to try to even this out is create political action committees, which then evolved into super PACs. So in order to understand this, it's very complicated. There's a video here that I think lines it out very clearly, the difference between these two things. Now, all of the power, all of the, and we're going to skip over this video, that happens in our government system has led to something called elitism. Elitism is where community or a society is controlled by the top by a few individuals or organizations. So elitism, we've talked about it in this class before. It's where a few wealthy people, a few business owners, corporations, that they have so much money, they have so much power in our society that they are able to have a lot of influence over the entire country because of their wealth and their power, which is, you might have heard of people talking about the 1%. 1% of our society has so much wealth and power that they're able to influence. So their values, the things that they think are important, their agenda rises to the top, and those that are at the bottom are not able to get our agenda or our voices heard. So a big thing that plays into this are corporations. So we have these corporations that have a lot of money, have a lot of influence. The owners, they affect our own political system. That video that I'm going to post that you can watch independently talks about our former president Barack Obama and how he was alleged to be elitist because of the education. Him and his wife went to, I believe, Harvard and Yale for their education. Think about it. How many of us would ever stand a chance of getting into Harvard or Yale? But going to one of those type elite colleges is typically mandatory in order to be involved in politics or work in corporate America, especially a high level position. So how does this all work? How are corporations so influential in politics? Well, our corporate leaders, there's like 5 ways that your book has documented this. One is that corporate leaders develop influential networks. So corporate leaders, they're friends with other corporate leaders. They're friends with politicians. They know each other. They have these tight social groups. They, go to parties and events, and they invite each other to different things that happen. So they're able to create these tight networks. Think about it when you have a problem that you want to solve. If you need something fixed in your house and you call this person for that because you know them, they're in your network, or your neighbor down the street that's really good at doing this. That's our level of networks. Corporate leaders have a whole different type of level of networks. They're not only connected to other world leaders, corporate leaders, business owners, but within our own government. They have these tight networks of people that they know. The second thing is that corporate leaders reward and punish elected officials through investment decisions. So through these networks and connections that they have, they're able to say, oh, if you encourage this type of legislation to help out my business or relax these rules to help out my business, then I'm going to contribute to your reelection campaign. Or if I give you money and you help me get into office, you will set me up with a cushy job within the government. That's where they reward and punish with that power and money that they have. Number 3, corporate leaders help people to get elected through campaign contributions. That was kind of just in the one we talked about before. Political clout of large corporations is multiplied because leaders sit on each other's board of directors. So we talked about corporations. They are led by these board of directors, which make decisions about what should happen in these companies. Well, if you have one powerful company and that leader sits on the board of a different public company, you can see how this network, they're interconnected with one another and how much power comes with that being connected over these tight groups. And conglomerates enhance political power. So what is a conglomerate? A conglomerate is groups like Walt Disney, groups like Procter & Gamble that own hundreds of smaller companies, and their reach and their interconnectedness across our economy makes them so influential. They could get upset about something and say, well, I'm not going to do this because I'm upset about this law or this legislation that was passed. And that can cause a chain reaction across our economy and our political system. That type of influence and power can make things happen. And that is the end of chapter 13 in the last video.